Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to DrumTipTV. This is episode 1 of our podcast series, and on episode 1 we're going to be talking to Adam Box of the country rock band Brothers Osborne. If you're not familiar with Brothers Osborne, a little bit about them. They are a 5-time Grammy nominee. They are 3-time winners of the Vocal Duo of the Year at the Country Music Awards. And one of the things that made me want to talk to Adam is that the band is a little bit different from the other groups in that genre, in that they are very much a band and are open to creating together and experimenting. And Adam discusses not only his work with Brothers Osborne and talking about how they've been able to shape their sound alongside of producer Jay Joyce, but also he talks about his journey in moving to Nashville, and also just some of his drumming influences and how he creates some of the parts he does for that band. So without further ado, we hope you enjoy episode 1 with Adam Box of Brothers Osborne.
Okay. I grew up in a town called Meridian, Mississippi, and got started out playing at church, and did that pretty young. I get there and play when I was like 6 and 7, and then eventually was the full-time drummer there when I was probably 15 or 16 years old. It was a pretty big church. It was televised at one point regionally, and then it was more of a local televised thing. So pretty early, it was very normal to have, a pretty big audience and cameras and lights and stuff like that. So I'd say somewhere around that same age. I say that same age. I'd always knew that I was looking for something musically. I wasn't sure exactly what it was as far as genre goes. My dad definitely introduced me like Genesis and of course all dads listen to Skynyrd and ZZ Top and stuff. So
right.
That was definitely an influence. But I knew I was looking for a specific genre. I didn't know what it was. So it was when I heard Metallica.
Oh wow!
The Black Album. Okay. And when I heard the Black Album, I was like, that is the genre. That is, or at least that is the sound that I've been looking for. Because prior to that, my daddy gave me some money and took me to the mall and went in the music store and said, "You can just buy whatever you want." I knew I was looking for that, so I didn't have anything to go on but the covers of the CDs, And I finally found this CD, and I was like, this has got to be what I'm hearing. And I went and put it in, and it was not what I was hearing. It was Flirting with Disaster by Molly Hatchet.
Whoa!
Molly, it has the guy, on all the covers with the axe.
Yeah.
I'm like, this has got to be it, But it wasn't. But when I heard the Black Album, I knew this is it, and it changed everything. So it was somewhere. I heard that when I was like maybe 14 or something.
Okay.
And then, so I was slowly morphing into this more aggressive, black hair. Then that kind of went on to Mudvayne was my next band.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And so I had joined a rock band in Jackson, Mississippi, active rock genre, and they had a little bit of traction with the radio station there, 93.9. And we were opening it up for some of the bigger bands coming through, like Seether and A Dark New Day, and some of those kind of groups.
Now, real quick, what year around would this have been? Would you say that you were with
2002?
2003. Oh, 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I stuck with them for probably 6 or 7 years, maybe 7 years, and then decided to move to Nashville when it just looked like it wasn't going to happen.
Okay. Now was that an original band, or was that mainly covers?
It was all original.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it just, after that period of time, it just looked like, hey, this isn't really going to work out for me. I need to just get a change of scenery and stuff like that. I mean, did you guys have any label interest whatsoever or anything like that? Or were you just doing Just opening for national acts and things like that?
Yeah, there was, it seemed like here and there would be somebody kind of courting us, and it looked like it was always almost going to happen, you know. And so, and I just changed the business model. Instead of me relying on a group of people, I just wanted to rely on myself, my business, and take that business to Nashville, become an independent contractor. And then nobody's responsible, you know, for all the reasons bands, you know, whatever weak links there, or there's nobody to blame but myself if this doesn't happen at this point, you know.
Okay, so you moved to Nashville, and talk a little bit about when you first got to Nashville. What were the first couple of things that you did to try to just generate some work? Where did you live? Like, were you living by yourself or like in an apartment or something like that? Talk a little bit about, you moved to Nashville, you take the leap of faith. What happens when you get to Nashville?
I honestly went there. It was definitely a leap of faith. I had some acquaintances that called me and asked if they had a room available, and I felt like that was a good move. So I go there, and it's a good while where I didn't, you know, I wasn't sure how to even get started. And I had put a Craigslist ad up, and this kid responded to this Craigslist ad. It was literally the day I moved to Nashville. Hey. And the day I moved to Nashville. And he responded to it, and he'd call me every single month for about a year. And I'm still like trying to figure out, do I go to Broadway and play? And I'm Googling Nashville drummer every day, you know. And so this kid's calling, and eventually a year's passed. My lease in that house with those guys is running up, and he says, I want you to go to California and record a record with me. This is a kind of a story that always comes up, but so I'm going to make it a really short version.
Sure.
So I go to Texas and move with him, and because I believe in him. After he sends me some music, I'm like, this dude's good. Move with him in Texas. He's 16, and we jam. And I bring him back to Nashville, put a band together, showcase, and eventually he signed to Red Bow, which is Broken Bow, basically. And I got fired that day. It took us about 4 years to make that happen. And the day, and I worked for free, you know, never got paid, building backing tracks.
Jeez.
You know, just it was like a 24-hour job. It was just my life. This is my ticket in, because I had no rapport really with anybody. And then when that fell through, I was thinking, man, I don't know, maybe go back to this. I don't know, but I felt like I was going to have to start completely over if I got something. But fortunately, John Osborne was at one of those showcases, and when he heard I was available, he kind of snagged me up with, it was Pete Sternberg, bassist for Brothers, that actually I had run into and had that conversation with. So best thing that ever happened to me. The worst thing was the best thing.
That's crazy, man. I think I did read a little bit about that in the piece that you did for Modern Drummer, because when we came to the show in Philly, like, I went home and just kind of looked you up a little bit, and I did read a little bit about that. If you don't mind me asking, was it just a thing? Were you let go by this artist, or were you let go by the label, or did they just can the whole band at one time, or how did that work?
No, they hadn't even. I mean, it was literally just signing on the dotted line for him.
Okay.
There was no actual. I mean, the label's hardly involved yet. He had some new people around him that realized how deep we were into it, and I didn't understand at the time that in Nashville, if you're not an actual band, if you have an artist that everybody's trying to kind of tiptoe around, and he's the star. I'm like, what? I found this dude.
Right.
You know, this is my little brother kind of deal. Yeah. You know, it's like, I ain't gonna be tiptoeing around him, and he ain't gonna be tiptoeing. You know, it was a different dynamic is not very normal in Nashville. And it was sort of weird. It was a weird kind of thing, you know, where I had more control than I was supposed to have, and you know.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like things worked out for you as they were supposed to anyway. So I'm glad to see that you stuck with it and you got to where you're supposed to be. And so the drumming influences, like, were there any people in particular, just kind of going back a little bit, that you really looked up to, or that really you feel helped to shape your sound? Because when I listen to you play, and we'll get into some of that stuff then with some of the different songs and everything, but when I listen to your playing, I hear a lot of different things. You know, I mean, you really seem to have a lot of influences. So maybe if you could just talk about a couple of people who really inspired you, or that, you know, you kind of said, I really gravitate toward this person or that person.
Yeah, well, initially Phil Collins, and still to this day, and you know, everybody knows he's a singing drummer, but he's not the first thing that comes to mind when you think drummers, but he really did have a big influence. And then, of course, Lars did, you know, that heavy-handed playing really appealed to me, and the aggression there, and then Benny Paul and some of those guys. But it was probably sometime around the time I first smoked pot or something, I had gotten involved with this guy in Meridian. His name is Chris Etheridge, and he played bass for Willie Nelson for about 6-7 years. Played on the road again, and Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. I mean, played on Willie's biggest hits, Redheaded Stranger, that era. But he was also a Flying Burrito Brother with Graham Parsons.
Okay.
So he was, 64, and what would look like maybe the downward arc of a career. Maybe nobody goes from opening for the Rolling Stones and living that life to going back to Meridian, Mississippi. But that was the case. But we bonded, and he really, he was my hero and my best friend at the time, and we were together every day. So I was really interested in hearing the burritos and hearing everything he played on, which is Rock Hooter and Linda Ronstadt records and all this stuff. He and Jim Keltner were like a duo.
Wow.
Everything you saw Jim Keltner on, you saw Chris on, or Johnny Barbadia, Chris. It's like, and all my friends were like, why are you always, just kind of ditched my social life. They're like, Adam's with that old guy again. I'm like, y'all don't understand, man. He's a legend.
Right.
Right. But he we would play every Monday in this little bar in Meridian, Sunday and Monday. And there'd be two people in there, one playing pool with himself and somebody drinking his problems away. But it'd just be a little 4-piece band there, and we'd be playing, and he would just say, he'd just look at me and be like, man, let's this one right here, let's play it like we're on the record right now. And then it'd be one that he actually recorded,
right? Yeah.
And we'd get done, and he'd be like, man, we'd play Whiskey River or something, because, man, that felt just like it did back in the day, man. Just these things would really boost me, like, man, that is awesome.
Right.
But he really turned me on to the what not to play, where I'd been trying to play every note. I had a lot to prove as any teenager or young person would, I needed my spot, whatever. But he taught me how not to play. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So that was a big turning point, where all the things I had accrued up to that point were now in a bag, and I could pick from those. But the new frontier was one I was not ready for, and that was to suppress my own voice and express myself in a way that complements the song as best as I can. Hard to do.
Yeah, it is, and one reason why I love your drumming is because you really do that well. I feel like with the different songs with Brothers Osborne, like you have a lot of different feels, and I feel that when I listen to your playing, like I can kind of tell it's you. Like, one question I had for you is, did you play in the EP also, the Brothers Osborne EP?
I didn't.
You didn't?
I didn't. They recorded that before they got their record deal.
Okay.
They brought me on. I mean, as soon as they got their record deal, I was kind of in the band very shortly after.
Gotcha. The only reason why I ask is because one of my favorite tunes is "Shoot from the Hip." That song is just badass. Like even yesterday, I was jamming out to that. I think it sounds like you. Like it has like a certain pocket to it that I just thought I can't tell from the credits or anything like that, or at least I didn't have the CD in my hand. I thought I have to ask Adam if that's him or not, because I think it sounds like you're drumming. So, but anyway, so I wanted to
that's Matt King. I need to make sure I say that. Matt King is the drummer.
Matt King
that played on that.
Okay,
and he's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Good for credit for that one. So, I just want to share with you a little bit about how I came to discover you guys. And last year, my wife and I were watching the CMA Awards. It was CMA Awards or CMA Fest, and you guys closed the show, and you played "Shoot Me Straight." And I'm watching it, and I'm really drawn to the fact that at the end of the tune, there's the whole section where you guys are basically like in a jam, and John's playing the guitar solo, and I was like, when I was a kid, I was really into the Allman Brothers and things like that. So that type of playing really appeals to me. And when I went and bought the Port St. Joe was the first one that I purchased. So when I went and bought that, and I'm listening to the record, just as a whole, I mean, there's a big melting pot of influences that are going into you guys' music. And I just wanted to ask, like, that's got to be fun for you to play, because it's not just one thing. I mean, you guys have a lot of different feels. And just if you could talk a little bit about that, and just how nice that is to play with the band, and how it's not just the same thing all the time, and maybe what some of those different influences are from the band that are brought to the table.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate to John and TJ Osborne. They have never wanted to do the polished sort of cookie cutter country thing, and I feel very fortunate that they encourage us to step out. They would, if you attempted something at a show or took it in some direction that was nobody expected, even if you bombed it, they would still look back and smile, like, I know what I know.
Okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
And so maybe the next night in that same spot, you would try something maybe similar, but a little more attainable, and then we'd go, and everybody would follow it and get it. And they're not scared to fall on their face. They're not that kind of people. They don't take it too seriously. They just want to have fun. But Allman Brothers, a big influence on those guys, and bands, the band, stuff like that. It's sort of, they're not trying to go that direction necessarily, but I think we played the Ryman, 3 nights at the Ryman last weekend, and some of the reviews were calling it Prague country.
Okay. Okay.
I'm like, oh wow, that's a new one. But hey, but it's nice. It's freedom. It's kind of everything you kind of want when you aspire to play music. Is just to get up there and jam like you would in a garage, where you're not really sure where it's going. You're just feeling it, and a lot of times it stinks, and a lot of times it's like, what just happened? That was some magical thing, and you can't get to that place without messing up. You can't get to that place without some risk, and the risk of falling flat on your face and it being a disaster. Otherwise, it would be exactly what it is, playing it safe, and there's enough people that do that very well.
Right on. You brought up a thing where you excuse me, you talked about playing live. Sometimes you might take a risk. So when we came to see you guys, one thing that really stuck out to me was when you guys did Shoot Me Straight. I don't know if this is something you do all the time, or if you've been doing it for a while, or just tried it that night. But when you got to the one section in the middle, you went halftime. You went like on your cymbal. It was like dun, 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 tch, tch. So, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. So, I mean, with something like that, was that something you just decided to try one night, or like that night or something? And because when I heard you do that, I was like, okay, he's got a little bit of like a heavier influence coming from someplace too, because not just anybody in the middle of a, you know, country rock song would bust into a halftime part. So was that something that you just decided to do one time?
Yeah, well, a lot of that would happen in sound check, where, you know, at sound check you played the songs a million times, so you're trying to experiment with it any way you can, because the point is to make sure you hear everything fine. So I drop into that, and they say, do that.
Oh,
like, cool. We started doing that, and it's, you know, I think every genre has stuff that people would like. Maybe a country fan would hear music like that and be like, I don't know how anybody listens to this. It's like, come on, man, that's awesome. And you know that feeling, and to give it to them for just about 20 seconds there, it's like because it's in a familiar palette all of a sudden. Well, I'm glad that the show reflects for 1 second some hard, like, breakdown metal.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. But you could never put that. There's no way in any universe you put that label on Brothers Osborne. But there's a moment in the show there. You know, it's a show. Just a show.
Yeah. Well, I love stuff like that, so I thought that was fantastic. You also brought up about you guys not being, you know, cookie cutter type of thing with the music, and I'm glad that you used that expression, because when I was thinking about talking to you today, I was thinking of that, but I was like, well, I don't want to use the expression cookie cutter, but that really is what comes to mind when I listen to your music, is that it would be really easy, because your songs are so good, it would be really easy for you guys, I think, to just be like, okay, here's that song formula, here's the song, it's good to go. And I wanted to ask about, for both albums you guys have done, you've worked with Jay Joyce as your producer. So I know Jay's kind of known for just kind of taking some risks and everything. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about working with him as a producer, and then what he has kind of brought to the Brothers Osborne band table to help you shape your sound.
I think when we went and recorded that first record within Pawn Shop, we were still, of course, the only thing that was out was the EP, and that wasn't anybody in the band at all anyway. So we've been playing these shows, and we had toured with Eric Church, and still trying to find maybe what exactly it is that we do. And the very first thing we went recording with them was Stay a Little Longer. And so, of course, there's already a version of this song. And while I'm learning that EP, these 6 songs to go play these shows with them, I had interpreted the tambourine for some reason, because I'm learning all these songs in a short period of time, and I interpreted that tambourine as a 16th note hi-hat. When on that chord it's just 8 notes on the offbeat basically. So when we recorded that, I did it with the 16th notes, and I didn't realize that it had really changed the feeling of the song a good bit. And even Jay was sort of like, do y'all want to do that 16th note thing? You know, sort of like. And John and PJ, they never, you know, they always knew that wasn't what was on it. They never told me. They were like, they liked that. So they sort of had pushed Jay in that direction, because it's not really something you had heard, at least up to that point, 16th note hi-hats in country music. Now, where Jay really broke us in, I think this was a very pivotal moment too, was at the end of that song, we had tracked it a couple times. He goes, this time when you do it, I want you to just keep on going. You know, it's like that vague. It's like, okay. And we're like turning around to discuss that. And he's like, don't talk, just do it. Y'all are, you know, and it's honestly, with Jay's, it can be a tense situation. I mean, he's pretty hard, really hard on rhythm sections, but the tension's already kind of up there, and he's saying, just play, and then hollers, I mean, like pretty angrily, like, aren't y'all a band? Come on, be a band, jam. You know, we're like, all right. So we just do this whole take, and we get to the end. we cut into this big long outro that was honestly one take, sort of impromptu jam that just came from listening and looking at each other. And I felt like that was a real moment where we figured, you know, we could do maybe more stuff in the same feeling, you know, of the jam kind of nature, because it was cool. It doesn't get played on the radio, that part doesn't.
But it should.
Well, you know,
I love it. Yeah.
Time. But working with Jay, I'm a producer as well. So when I'm watching Jay work and how he works, and what he brings to the table, he's just off center, and he's safe is not the word. Absolutely not the word. And he's on fire right now too.
He is. He is. Yeah. Does he, when you guys are working with him, there are a lot of times where he will encourage you all to make, or does he like to experiment with different sounds and things like that? Just because I notice it on a lot of the different tracks, you know, there might be some different sounds, like on Pawn Shop, you know, there's like the drums have a little bit of a different sound to them, versus one tune we'll talk about a little bit later is like not pushing up daisies, but it's gonna come to me here. A little bit trouble. It's got kind of like that, you know, sort of that electronic snare type of sound too. So are there times when he's just kind of saying, hey, let's try this, or does that mean kind of come more from you guys, or is it just all a big collective experiment?
As far as the other songs go, I was actually kind of surprised, because I talked to some of my drummer buddies that had recorded with him, and he's very hands-on with those things. And but I kind of would maybe put down a snare, for instance, tune it kind of how I dug it, and he would go with it, you know. But a little bit of trouble in particular was one where we did experiment a lot, and he eventually just put a rolling V pad down, and that's the program drum. Now the other, I shouldn't give away all my secrets here, but I would say nearly the entire Port St. Joe record is a Acrolite tuned different ways.
Wow, excellent. Okay.
So we had gone in and recorded that, and we're in a living room of a beach house. So, and we're playing really soft. I'm trying to get just the tone of the drum hitting very, very, very soft. And there was some moments I couldn't really, I wish I'd even played softer when I hear it, but an Acrolite, or any snare for that matter, there's so many, just with tuning and the tension of the snares and how you're hitting it. Every one of those snares sound different. That's Acrolite, just about every one of them, you know? Yeah. The first record, like Ain't My Fault, has that splattier kind of snare, which was more of it's a Superphonic 6.5 that I tuned like I would my main snare, but I just dropped two of the lugs completely loose and then get the snares to do a splat. So Jay, I'm other than there's another song on Pawn Shop called Dirt Rich that he brought in a little kid's drum set, so I played on this little bitty drum set for that one. But other than that, he's let me kind of you know, get my tones, and I guess he likes it, so he doesn't change it.
That's great. So just to be sure, now you said so for the electronic sound on Little Bit Trouble, is that your playing, but just like a replaced sound on the snare drum?
Yeah, it was playing the acoustic kit, and the V drum is my snare. So they just went ahead and dialed up a sound, and I just played it like that.
I got you. Okay. So you started talking about gear a little bit, so we'll transition into that. So you are pretty much a Ludwig guy, is that correct? In terms of your drums?
Yeah, I play vintage Ludwigs. I'm not like affiliated with Ludwig in any way, but other than I just play drums I like, and right now it happens to be the 60s Ludwigs. But the kit I got right now, I actually got on Reverb for like $900 or so, but it had a 12-inch depth kick drum, and even moving to a 14, which is standard vintage size, the 22 by 14, because I had been used to playing the 18-inch depth kick drum with my rock bands and stuff like that. When I hit a 14-inch kick drum, I was like, what have I been doing? What are these kids doing? They're playing 20-inch depth kick drums. Shallow kick drum. I love it, for me. But I got the 12-inch depth because I wanted them in my studio. I was like, oh, that'd be pretty cool. But sure enough, it wasn't long. I was like, nope, these are going out. The way it feels with the heads so close together, people are really surprised to know that's a 12-inch, 12 by 22. It was like a little bitty guy.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Man, it feels great. It sounds great,
Yeah, I noticed that on your one post that you had about it was a 12, and I'm sure that was the drum you had when I came to see you. So I was curious if you were still using that. And then in a lot of your different posts as well, there's a lot of different drum kits that I've seen. So are those all pretty much your kits, or are they just maybe kits that you used on Backline? Like I saw a number of different Ludwig kits. So are those all part of your collection? Like, would you describe yourself as a collector, or did you just have them and then you traded them in or something like that?
Yeah, I kept, like, I had a set of Bissolites I was playing for a while, and then another set of 70s Ludwigs that were not the 3-ply, and that's another reason I wanted to take the ones I have now are the 3-ply. I really like the way they sound. But I would just say it was drums I really dug. I would love to have some maybe a vintage Gretsch set or something of that nature. Now the snares was one that when I started playing Ludwig snares, I didn't think I'd ever play another brand ever. Just the Superphonic alone was basically I was either playing a Superphonic 5 as my main and a 6.5 on my side, and then that went to a hammered Black Beauty, which is, Black Beauty speaks for itself. But as of late, I started hitting. I love the Acrolite sound, but something about an Acrolite was a little too thin. It just wasn't powerful enough for a live setting for me. So I started playing this Yamaha aluminum snare, which I actually really like. And it has die-cast hoops, which I'm not used to. I've always played those Ludwig snares, which meant every single hit, my lugs are going out of tune. But it was worth it just for those 5 first hits of each song, perfection. But I'm fighting it all night. Now, that Yamaha snare's loud, it cracks, it's got the tone I want, it's not too ringy, and my lugs stay where they're at. So, hey, Yamaha, I love that.
Yeah. On your Ludwig kit, you talked about the 3-ply. Do they have the reinforcement hoops on the inside? Mm-hmm. They do. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Cool. Excellent. Okay. So you were talking a little bit before about experimenting within the group setting and everything, and I think one thing that for me really kind of separates you guys from some of the other groups, especially in the country genre, is that you guys really, at least from an outsider's point of view, myself, seem to be a band. You know what I mean? And when I first heard your music, I probably, like a lot of other people, maybe just it was Brothers Osborne, but like there was TJ and there was John, but I really have come to find that you guys really seem to be like a band, and I don't think that the music would be what it is if it were not for those people that make up that whole part. So could you just talk a little bit about that and how, what it's been like to be part of a band, and what your thoughts are on you guys being a true band versus other artists who, when they go in the studio, they'll just have studio guys play on the tracks, and then when they go on the road, they have their live band and everything. But you guys seem to be an actual band.
In Nashville, a lot of the guys kind of, or at least around Nashville, people joke about everything sounding exactly the same, or the same guitar tones, the same guitar solo. Well, it's a simple the simple equation. It's the same people, plan on everything, which is understandable. They come in, get the job done fast, and time is money, and people have their relationships and stuff. But as far as Brothers go, we've been fortunate to be a unit of all the same members for, I guess, around 6 years now, where in Nashville it's very common for artists for people to hop around, and even early in this gig, I would be getting calls from people that would sort of seem like a step, another level, and then something in me personally was thinking, if this goes where I think it may go, I think it'll benefit me a lot better if I remain loyal to this. That one day maybe those guys will take care of me, just for knowing that I was, I didn't look for the next stepping stone. And that's a very common thing in Nashville. And a lot of the band vibe is there because we've been together, we've grown. We're not, as soon as you, especially a drummer, for God's sake, as soon as you introduce a new person there, it's a new foundation to start building on. They don't know it's like where we are now when we're playing live, it's like 1,000 inside jokes or something, but like this hit, this stop, this whatever, all these things just started adding up. There would be no way for somebody else to come in and just get all that stuff, and I don't do it. Whatever reference they're listening to learn, I may not have even done it that night, So there is definitely chemistry there, and I'm very thankful that the brothers recognize how unique having that dynamic and that equation of the same guys playing, and that's a big part of it. Very, very unusual for Nashville, and to play on the record. I can't say enough how thankful I am to be able to play on that record, and that they get, they could bring the studio guys in, we could learn their parts, but there would be a disconnect a little bit from the record and live. And live is not like the record, but there's still something in the spirit still there, and it's the same because it's the same guys, I believe in that, really do.
Excellent. And you also have seems like a pretty solid relationship with the bassist Peter Sternberg, and you had talked a little bit about how you guys kind of came into the band at the same time, and I wanted to comment on him as a bass player as well, because one of the things I really love about country music, country rock music, whatever you want to call it, is that we were talking earlier about hard rock and heavy metal, and you've got that type of music. What happens with bass players a lot of times in that genre is that the bass player is kind of tied down to, and even sometimes the drummer are tied down to kind of having to match that guitar riff because it's that heavy precision factor going on. And in the country genre, I really like how the bass player is allowed more opportunity to play half notes, whole notes, and it just really fills the sound with a rich warmth to it, and they can play more melodically. So maybe you could just talk about your relationship with Peter, like on a personal level, and how you guys work, and then also as a rhythm section, what you feel about that connection too.
Well, Pete, I can definitely say is probably the best bass player I've ever played with, and he, as far as off the stage, Pete and I, I met him maybe a year before I joined the band, so there wasn't a lot of time. I just seen him in passing, but there was a bit of a hazing. I would say not hazing, but when I first joined the band, Pete, he's real, he's very pro, and he's got his shit together all the time, and it seems natural for him when there's a new guy to sort of lay down the law. I don't know how they said exactly, but it doesn't make it easy. So it really wasn't easy for me at the beginning of my time with the band, I felt like there was some, I wasn't sure what it was, but Pete and I mean, just on a personal level, I mean, polar opposite politically. Okay. I mean, you know, everything completely, but, our opposites really have really just kind of done the old merge here. And, we have he's one of my best friends. He really is. But he whipped me into shape as the way he did.
Okay.
I'm very fortunate this to be my real gig, because if I had got on another established gig, I don't think I would have been ready. We were all kind of making mistakes, but we were able to make them together, so there was some grace there, you know. But Pete's a big part of the equation of me learning how to get it together and no mistakes, you know. As far as actually playing goes, when I go back and hear stuff that we have played together and hear where he interprets the pocket, you know, and where I interpret it, it's got more and more cohesive. Us playing, I feel like he makes me sound better. He tends to say the same thing. But two very unlikely people to be in any sort of unit, but he's amazing. Very connected guy in Nashville. Everybody really respects him as a bass player. And as you said about, you know, in the metal genre where there's a lot of movement, a lot of stuff going on, I mean, he does a great job of making the rhythm section its own world, its own platform for other melodies to sit on top of. You know, he's very, very musical. And, you know, playing in this, it's like, for example, in Justice for All, didn't even have to have a bass, you know, because if there was a bass, more than likely it would have been playing the exact same thing the guitar was playing. The way Pete plays, especially on Port St. Joe, is it's like a song within a song, you know.
Yeah.
In the most simplistic way, though, you know. No ego with Pete. He wants the right notes played at the right, and with Jay grilling him, you know, he did. But he grilled both of us. But that, what you hear when you hear those records, is me and Pete on the edge of our seat, you know.
Got it.
We're kind of scared.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
Okay.
But Pete, live, Pete is cool as a cucumber.
He is.
And it makes me feel cool, you know.
Yeah, he stands in there and he plays his part so warm and rich and everything, and it's kind of a neat dynamic to watch as a band as well. And something else I want to touch on too. You said about how with the rhythm section on the records, and you know, obviously as a drummer and a rhythm section player, I can really appreciate this. Is that I when I listen, especially with headphones, I can go to different parts of the music and not only hear new things, but just I can kind of meander with what I listen to. So like, you know, usually when you listen to a song the first time, you'll maybe just be struck by the overall melody or like the vocal of the chorus or something like that. But then when I listen to your music, and for those out there who have never listened to Brothers Osborne before, I encourage you to do so, because you hear, like you said, songs within the song. You hear new little nuggets all the time. And there's just a couple things I wanted to ask you about that I thought were pretty cool. In a couple wrongs making it all right, like in the beginning, you guys just have those little offbeat hits and stuff like that. And I was wondering, is that just something that comes out of being playful when you're in the studio and just saying, what about if we do this? Because I mean, you know, realistically, you could have just waited for however many bars and then just said, okay, now we're going to come in. But instead, there's still nice little treats mixed in there.
Those particular hits at the beginning of a couple wrongs were 100% Jay Joyce, suggestions there.
Okay.
So we were trying to wrap our head around at the time, because they're kind of weird spots. One is like a, upbeat, and but yeah, that was all Jay Joyce there. And let me touch on something else about that song.
Please, yeah.
This is Jay Joyce. we tracked that song. It was two takes on that song. I know people brag. I'm not a bragger about getting stuff. And I will, as a producer, I'm like, I don't want anybody here racing to be the first one finished. You know, like, oh, I did it in 3 takes. Do 10 takes. I don't care. I want this to be thought out. You know, but that one was 2 takes. The first take, we listened back, and he said, let's do it again. And we did it a second time. And then Jay just panned them left and right, the 2 takes.
Okay.
And I was like, because after we did the second take, he goes, I think we got it. I'm like, hold on, I'm just wrapping my head around this, you know? But I can listen to it, and I was so thankful that on the second take, I didn't do any fills. I just played the groove. The first take got the fills.
Okay.
While I'm still working my way around it. So if I had tried to do fills on both, that would have been a nightmare. But so that's the 2 takes, pan left and right, and that was Jay Joyce. It did not feel that way with one set of drums going. It was very boring. When those 2 happened, I just want to start dancing all of a sudden. So,
and that's what you hear. That's what you hear in the
record
record too. It's both put together like that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. See, that's
go back and listen.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I love little nuggets like that. So, sticking on that song for a little bit. So live, one thing I noticed about your playing is for that song in particular, that your hi-hat work is very precise, you know, like especially like your right hand. I mean, when I watched you play that song, I was almost thinking, I wonder if this cat played like in a reggae band at one point, because like your right hand was so precise. And I noticed on a lot of the other songs you do as well that it's just a subtle thing, but you know, you'll play a lot of upbeats with the hi-hat and things like that. So is the hi-hat work something that you know, consciously do, I guess is the question, or is it, do you just feel like it's a part of your playing naturally when you're doing that stuff?
If I was to sit down at a drum set, I would go right to a 16th hat. My very first influence was the gospel thing. Now, when you think gospel, there's all kinds that in a lot of directions, but we were doing more of a contemporary, sort of what the black gospel choirs were doing. So there was a lot of real urban influences there, you know, that were a little funkier. I feel really natural playing funkier styles. But as far as like throwing in upbeat stuff, it's mostly me just trying not to do stuff like that, and you still get maybe a couple, or probably too many, but at least a handful of that stuff happening. But yeah, it's definitely interwoven in my style to play the tight kind of 16th note thing, and then for somehow go back and forth between just the 8th note metal thing that still has ghost notes in it. You know?
And that,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, just from one drummer to another, I don't think the upbeat thing happens too much. In fact, I think that with a song like excuse me, Don't Remember Me, you know, when the chorus, it just, I think it helps the vocal and the melody to sit in a really strong place. And I also liked the fact that when I listened to it a couple times, that the bass drum, you just played really simply. Like it would have been really easy for you to do a thing where, you know, it would have been like, you know, dun, 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 boom, 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 ba, boom, 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 you know, something that was more busy, but it really sat in a nice place by you playing more simplistically. So again, just one reason why I love your drumming. If we could talk about a couple of other tunes. So we talked about a couple wrongs, Pushing Up Daisies, Shoot Me Straight. So in the beginning, I didn't even realize this in the beginning at first, but there's the hole from the bass drum on beat 4, every other measure, which I thought was just, it's so simple but so clever because it just allows that little guitar lick to kind of sit in there. So how did something like that come about?
Being a producer is drummer, I'm not sure if producer's first and drummer second or drummer producer. Been drumming a lot longer. But when he was playing that riff, before we ever started tracking, the slap back on that guitar part made it just seem like it was the end of it would suck out. Burn up.
Right.
And I didn't want to cover that up, So if I just stopped that kick drum, that thing would go burn up, and then back in. And just as simple as that. I didn't hate for that, but now that you asked the question, I remember thinking that, and it just wouldn't have been as cool, And I think just the 4-on-the-floor all the way through would have been probably good too. But I like hearing the kick drum stop and the slap of that last note of that guitar sucking out and coming back in,
Yeah, me too.
And producing, I'd say the producing thing has helped me grow. When a lot of times I'd have to play a lot of instruments on people's songs that were having me do their music. So if you're going to play the other instruments, you don't feel like you have to speak so much on another one. It's like, well, I don't want that to mess up my guitar part. I know I'm going to do or this, that, and other. So the more I dove into producing world, it seemed to be the less I'd play on drums. And that's an example right there. I wanted his part to be cooler, I guess.
Shine through. What other instruments do you play?
Nothing. I would never, ever claim to play anything but drums. But having the rhythm that drums give you, my right hand tends to make people believe I can play. It's this other stupid hand that takes it, But it's a great. If I have kids ever, drums and piano, if I can get on those two guys. It's just the rhythm hand is what makes it sound like you can play any other instrument other than like a woodwind, of course, or
right.
Well, shoot, I guess stringed violin and stuff too. I guess that is your right hand too. You'll get the notes right or wrong. You'll get it, but if your right hand is weak, rhythm-wise, there's the subdivisions of what you're trying to do. It's your right or left hand, I guess, given if you're right or left-handed. Your strumming hand is the only way I can convince people, because they don't see how long it actually takes. It may take me all night to get that guitar part, but so yeah, I play drums, and we'll figure out the other if we got to.
But you can actually formulate chords and stuff like that, right? To play other instruments?
Yeah, I don't always know what I'm playing, but I know what's right and wrong,
Well, you have one up on me for that, because my dad's a guitar player, and years ago I sat down, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to try and everything, and don't want to say I gave up necessarily, but it's like just having to, shape the chords and everything. I thought, like, man, this is really challenging, where some people say, I don't know how you do, something with your right hand and your left foot. And I'm like, that's the easy part to me. I can do that with no trouble. So talking about your touring and everything, I know you guys just finished up some shows at the Ryman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Somewhere online, I had seen a really cool, I think it was a post or something like that, where you talked about how it was really neat to have gone from, I guess maybe playing outside of the venue, years ago, and then now you're getting to play on the inside of that. And I really connected with that, because I when I was younger, like, I used to go to shows all the time with all these different venues, and to actually be able then to go on the inside, not only to be inside, but to actually be on the stage, was a really, really cool thing. So talk a little bit about that journey, having gone from, when you were there in Nashville and playing outside the Ryman, now you're on the stage.
I would, well, the Ryman and the Bridgestone Arena are right beside each other. So basically right beside me, across the street, separated by Broadway, basically. And anytime there was, I say anytime, but several times there would be shows in either the Ryman or Broadway or Bridgestone, mostly Bridgestone, because I had more people coming out that I would go work for. I'd go set up a kick snare hat and grab some, tips or whatever. Rush or something. I knew if Rush was playing, they were probably going to be pretty pumped up on drums. So if they walk outside, somebody's doing some drum stuff. So I'd make some okay money, in a very short amount of time when they would all come rushing out. But then, you flash forward and you're on the Bridgestone or the Ryman, and you're kind of like, man, it's pretty wild, but it also forces me to kind of think that, you do it and you do it so many times that you have where you were. I'm not hungry enough. I don't mean that literally. I mean hungry as in my drive
sure.
to actually go play outside on the street. I would, now it's like, I'm gonna stay at home. That kind of feeling now. But back then, I was really hungry. I was kind of both. I was hungry figuratively and literally. But that thing is special, and it's sort of something you sort of trade in a little bit. Is that that youthful, hopeful energy that really, when you look back at it, you can say that, man, that was one of the best times of my life. It's like, and not necessarily looking back and saying playing the Bridgestone was the best time of my life, because those, on paper and as far as kind of where your trajectory is, yeah, it is, a much better part. But as far as like internally, just in my head and in my reflecting on everything, looking back at that time was really special, and you sort of trade that in a way. So I always try to say that to. I had drum students. I was teaching some drum lessons in Meridian a little bit. Reach out to them, and they're still playing and stuff, and they want to know what it's like. What it's like to do these things, and I want to somehow message back to them. What you have that is what drumming's about. It ain't necessarily this. That ain't what drumming's about. It's what you're doing. And I want them to remember that. Where you're at right now. That hunger can be very, very special, even more fulfilling than whatever playing Madison Square Garden or anything like that. That doesn't fill the drum-shaped hole in your heart necessarily.
Yeah, you're totally right. And one thing, I agree with you that as we take this on as a profession, and it's something that we do have to maintain that, as much as we can, that childlike passion, enthusiasm for what we're doing, because if you kind of let the doldrums set in sometimes, and it's kind of like it becomes more of a routine, you have to remind yourself, like, man, I remember back when I would have, given anything just to do this. So that's really cool that you tell your students that too, and people you talk to, because I think one thing I like about you guys too, is you really seem to be appreciative of the success that you've had. Like I remember when we came to see you in Philly, and TJ talked to the crowd about, it's been really cool that every time we've been in Philly, we've seen the crowds grow and things like that, and there just seems to be a genuine appreciation from your band that you've been able to achieve this success. Would you agree with that overall?
Absolutely, yeah. And I can honestly say John and TJ are the same as the day I met them. I just could never see them really getting into superstar, me. They ain't like that, and I don't feel like anybody in the band really has that. We see the cliche in that, and everything about the band is about just, trying to stay away from the cliche as much as possible. And it's like, if that stuff starts happening, it's like, well, of course it is. So typical that it would, we're all just genuinely happy to play instruments in the jam, and, we're excited to go to sound check and play and dial in our stuff and mess with our gear and stuff, that's the childlike part of it is the part we're gonna hang on to as long as we can, I hope.
In the drumming community, just in general, one thing I've always liked about the drumming community, and I'm sure you can probably attest to this as well, but you know, we really tend to have a communal type of vibe. And when, you know, I've listened to other drumming podcasts and everything, and I'm usually really struck by the the country drummers, because there really seems to be a genuine wanting to continue to learn, you know, and then also adapt to needs of the show and everything. So one question I was wondering for you is, do you feel like you've had to adapt in any way since joining the band? Like I noticed live, excuse me again, you have the little station over to your right where you know, I don't know if you're running click, or I mean, I can't imagine you guys are a band that runs many tracks and things like that, but are you running anything that maybe you didn't have to do before joining the band that you've had to adapt to a little bit?
Yeah, there was one gig that I was getting hired to do here and there. That was, you know, just more. It was a great paying gig. It was nothing. I wasn't sure of the future of it, but one reason that I wasn't getting called anymore is because I didn't have a laptop, and I was like, man, I got this far and put this much work into becoming a skilled drummer that I'm losing gigs because I don't have a laptop. I'm like, that is such bullshit, you know? But when I got with Brothers, of course, with my previous artist that I was helping, we were doing more of a left click, right kind of thing, and split it out, you know, sending the I was the only one hearing the click, and this mono signal was going to and there was a lot of tracks happening back then. But Brothers, we started at the very beginning, trying tracks and stuff, and then now basically all I'm doing is just running the click for everybody, and then there's just 3 tunes that have tracks that have basically shakers and stuff like that. Like Ain't My Fault has to have, we're going in this long jam that has a lot of space where I'm not even just kind of keeping my hi-hat clicking, but it just keeps these shakers and stuff going that at this point it doesn't make sense to hire on a big percussion section. But it's important for the feeling of that song to have these big shakers, so it's that. But and then Stay a Little Longer was the first single, you know, back when we were still in that mindset. It's a little hard to create the right feeling without this big slam kick kind of in this. But I have to think it's mostly shakers on that. There's a couple little maybe synth things, but Billy, our synth keys guy, seems to cover all these things somehow. He's got some extra arms. So yeah, but yeah, mostly tracks, and I had to adapt to that. That was one of those mistakes that I was allowed to, you know, or growing pains, I should say, that I had to go through. Was if I was in a well-established band back there, like just messing up the show, it wouldn't last long. But I had some opportunities, or at least a cushion to mess up big a couple times. And now I think these days it's like, man, when was the last time we had a real mishap or something like that? I don't know.
That's good. That's good.
You know what it was? I actually got all the cables and stuff that go to the laptop into the Apogee, and I loomed them. All I did was loom them. Like, that doesn't change anything except psychologically. It's just, I have this neat loom going, and now none of my stuff messes up anymore. It's amazing.
Wow.
That's my biggest loom. Just loom your stuff. It'll fix all your problems.
Okay. Are there any other drummers that, like, just with touring and stuff like that, any drummers that you know, have kind of bonded with, and just you guys have been able to have like some nice hangs and stuff like that? I mean, I remember years ago when Breaking Benjamin when we went on one of our first big tours, and we were playing with 3 Doors Down, and I remember we showed up. We were opening for them, and we showed up. It was the House of Blues in L.A. or something like that. And they were sound checking, and I walked in and I heard this guy just playing the drums at sound check, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, who is this guy? You know, and then it turned out the drummer was Daniel Adair, who is now the drummer for Nickelback for the last, you know, I don't even know how many years now, but he, when we were touring with those guys, we became pretty good friends, and so we would hang a lot and we would exchange some ideas and stuff like that. So has there been anybody that you really respect or that you get to hang out with that you really appreciate or anything?
Absolutely. I could just go on and on and on with the names there. I would say I'm going to at least say the first one that comes to my mind, and then I'm not going to make a list after that because I'll leave people out. And there's so many drummers I've made friends with. But Hubert Payne plays with Little Big Town. I met him when he was playing with David Nail. That was his first tour. David Nail. So I met Hubert, and we really hit it off. And I found out that a lot of the drummers in Nashville all come from the same church background. And so there's sort of you definitely relate in that manner because that can either be intense situation or wonderful situation. There's so many things that brings, in congruence to another person's life. So yeah, that was a big Hubert. I'm gonna have to say him. He's my first, and he's like my brother. I love him.
Okay, great. You talked earlier, just backtracking a little bit, you talked about the producer, being a producer and everything. And I think I noticed, are you building a studio right now?
Actually just finished it. I mean, there's little things to do, but I started my first record, recording this, girl from New York named Lisa Gentelli, and, trying to get the feel of the room, and I kind of went above and beyond in the design, and had an acoustician come in, and I wanted the aesthetic to be right. In Nashville, there's no shortage of awesome studios and stuff, so I needed to. I'm not trying to compete. I'm not trying to make an open door or a revolving door. People come in, pay, and leave, and I really needed a place that would match the frequency of the level of an artist that I believed in the future, and they could come there and feel like they're in the right place. Because there's a psychological aspect of that where you're at a point in your career, I don't need to be in somebody's bedroom anymore.
Yeah.
And whether or not you could be making something amazing in there, and I'm sure there's better stuff being made in bedrooms or at Blackbird Studio in Nashville. But I needed to make sure I was creating a place that matched that, at least that frequency for people and frequency for myself. So while I'm working, and people walk in, it's in my house, in this neighborhood. And when they walk in, it seems to be the same reaction. It's like, whoa, this is a real studio. It's like, yeah.
That's cool. I was going to ask you if the studio was also part of your house, or if you just bought the place and just turned it into a studio. So that's really cool. It's both, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is about 1,000 square feet down there, and it had 9-foot ceilings, and we did it right. I'm learning it. There's a lot to learn about the place for myself, but so far so good. I'm really digging it.
Awesome. So just a couple more questions here. What is up next for, the Brothers Osborne band? It looks like you guys are going to be on tour for a pretty good chunk of this year as headliners, and then also with Chris Stapleton. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I imagine another record will be, I don't know what I'm supposed to can or can't say, but obviously we're not going to stop making records, right. And there's one of those in the future. So whenever that is, but I would say it's very likely it'd be by the end of this year, at least some of that pre-production kind of stuff would start happening.
Okay.
But yeah, long tour. Last year was about 130 dates. I think this year is about 100. Leads me to believe there will be the rest of those dates will be filled with some sort of album creation of some sort.
Gotcha. Well, it seems like, again, this is from strictly an outsider's point of view, but another reason why I respect the band is because it seems like with the touring thing, I know that it can be, there's a lot of things that people don't always understand about touring, and it really looks like you guys have a great camaraderie, and that there's, I'm sure there's like little squabbles here and there and stuff like that, but it looks like there's a genuine camaraderie that really can make or break not only a band, but also just your touring lifestyle and wanting to tour, right?
There should be, what we're doing is almost a social experiment, okay? We got two brothers first. That should be a recipe for disaster, and yet it's not. Okay, there's things, of course, you see that there's sibling things there, like he knows his, you know, there's the passive one and the more aggressive one, and you see some of the same patterns and them getting a little agitated over the pattern. But honestly, it's still a miracle. I mean, it's how they get along. It's like, it's totally cool. And now the other part of that experiment is, I would say that they all lean in the same direction politically. This is important, especially these days. We all live on a bus, for God's sake.
Right, right.
I'm the one on the total opposite of that spectrum.
You are,
you know, and pretty hard. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You know? So, but there's no conflict with me either. You know, in fact, when I love them all. And when people talk bad about other people that share their view, all I can do is think about one of them and be like, well, I love them. I probably love you too. You know, it's easy to characterize people.
Sure.
And when you get people involved in your life and don't shut them off because, you know, a lot of people just refuse to associate with people. And that's the worst thing you do. So there's major disagreements in the band, and guess what? We're not even trying to work them out. We're like, tell me yours. I love. Oh, cool. And I can and somehow my opinion can come back as some comical thing that just lifts the, you know, it's
right.
I got to get my opinion out. But I was able to slide in the most clever thing with it that made everybody laugh so hard. It was like, and then we move on to the next thing. There's never any conflict, and we're about as diverse as a group as you can get.
Wow!
You know?
Wow!
Yeah.
When I get the sense also that, you know, I'm, you know, again, just, you know, once we became, you know, friends on Instagram and everything, I've seen like you've got some pictures of your mother on there and everything, and it looks to me like you've got a pretty good, solid, you know, support from your family and everything. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and what that's meant for you to have been supported to take on, you know, music as a lifestyle and a profession and everything.
You know, the bar, at least for playing music, was set pretty high by my daddy. He's a guitar player, and then in town, in Meridian, you know, he played at church my whole life, but he had a life previous to that before I was born where he was long-haired, you know, working at Peavy. Peavy's based in Meridian.
Okay.
And, but see, when I started playing with Chris Etheridge, my bassist friend out in the bar in Meridian, I would meet these people that you know, my daddy may or not remember that knew him in the day, and they go, man, your daddy, you're Thomas Fox's son? Your daddy's one of the best guitar players I've ever heard. You know, all this stuff. I'm like, my daddy? You know, at the church? You know, like, yeah, but he, you know. But so the bar was set really high, and I knew that I came at least from a quality background there. And the church that I grew up at playing was really quality musicians. Now, leaving that to try to play rock music as I was going to Jackson and playing those. When the equation is mixed with leaving church, playing bars, and not knowing if this is a dead end or not, you know, more than likely, most of the time it is, you know, just quite frankly.
Right.
So I can understand, like, parents not necessarily being enthusiastic about that. And then I had friends who were not very talented, and yet their parents were like, whoa, you know, in the back, you know, like just pushing them. My parents were more concerned for, I guess, my well-being and my soul and my future before anything that would come with music. However, it was a challenge with their support, them being my best friends and my biggest heroes. That was a big reason for me to push and to say, I have to do this, and I'm going to make you proud, you know. And my mother has always been in my corner. My daddy, they've always been in my corner. But I don't blame them. They were always a little nervous about it up until this point.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, they're super thrilled. You know, I mean, just thrilled.
That's awesome.
But they were definitely blessed.
Fantastic. Well, I wanted to close out by just saying, you know, one thought that I had is, and I commented on this to my wife as well, just to share with you, is I think you guys are going to be around for a long time, and I think a big reason for that is I feel like you have 3 strong things going for you, in no particular order, and one of them is that you guys have great songs. You know, I mean, the songs are there. So often you have bands where, you know, maybe there's a great front man, but like the songs, like there's filler on the albums and stuff like that. There's not. You know, I mean, like I can listen to these albums over and over again. So there's songs. Number 2, you have a fantastic band of really good musicians that play awesomely well together. I mean, like when I saw you, you guys are a well-oiled machine, man. So like that, there's number 2. And then the last thing is you know, you've got a guy who is a front man who can command the crowd and, you know, has great personality. And then just from talking with you, the last thing would be that there is that sense of, you know, just a great, you know, communal type thing where it's not just about this person or that person. It's like you guys are successful because of this group of people. You know what I mean? So I look forward personally just to kind of following you guys and just, you know, continuing to be a fan. And I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day, being on tour and just talking to me, because it's been an honor. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. It's been an honor for me too.
Cool.
Big Breaking Benjamin fan back in the day too, you know. So
thanks, man. Yeah, when I reached out to you, you know, it's like there's some people that are familiar with that band, and like, you know, the only reason why I ever even bring that up is because I just want people to know I'm just not some weird stalker dude or something like that. So I'm just like, it gives me like a little bit of credibility just to say, hey, you know, like there's something to this. So when you wrote back, you know, I was just like, awesome, man. I can't wait to talk to him. So, you know, please express to all the guys in the band how much we love your band, continued success. And when you come back around, you know, close to PA, I hope to, you know, definitely come out and see you guys again. So enjoy the rest of your tour.